Hello. Thank you for joining me today. I'm just so excited about what I want to share with you. I'm going to do a series called Three Keys to Lasting Love. So, this series is about my thoughts about what it takes for a love relationship and a marriage to not just survive, um, but to thrive. And so, during these three, maybe four um, sessions, I know I'm talking like a therapist, but during these three times of a meeting or four, I just want to have share some thoughts with you about how important it is that a long-term relationship, marriage, that it not just survive. Because many times when couples have been together for a while, they find themselves with their busy lives not having the connection that they had in the beginning. I mean, life happens all the time. And it's important to keep the key pieces in place to keep that spark going. And so there's very many practical ways of doing that. And during these three-part series, I want to share one each time with you. So before we get started, for those of you who are meeting me for the very first time, my name is Melva Johnson, and I am co-founder of the Johnson Relationship Institute for Couples and co-author of the book, Mining for Gold in Your Marriage. It's an institute and a book that I developed with my late beloved soulmate husband, Jesse. So we worked together for well over 30 years, helping as many couples as we can to keep the love alive in their relationship. And we knew that if we were going to be working with couples to do that, that it was real important that we had our act together. And so we started within, in terms of what both of us were going to do to contribute to having the quality of life together that we wanted. And we also figured out what we were going to do together. So here's the thing. I like what, and I hope I pronounced her name correctly. I think it's Suzanne Lacour, something like that. She wrote the book called, one of the books that she wrote is called Emotionally Intelligent Romance. And she says that love brings out the best of us and the worst of us. The good news is that love brings out the best of us. The bad news could be that it also brings out the worst of us. However, here's how I think about that second part. The worst of us that comes out, especially during conflict, is the part within us that is underdeveloped and trying to grow. And I kept that in mind as I progressed forward in my own marriage with my beloved. So, and thank God we decided that we were going to work on not work on it, that we were going to travel our journey together to make sure that we had all of the pieces in place for ourselves before we started sharing that with others. But actually, we really started working on that before we got married. But as once you say I do, then all these other opportunities come up that surprise you. Well, they surprised me. But anyway, we were committed to building that foundation for ourselves. And so when I think about love thriving, I think about what Gandhi says. And he says how important it is to be the change that you want to see. So I modify that a little bit to it's so important to be the love that you want to be whether things are going well or whether you're hitting a hurdle, so to speak. The question that I would ask myself and that I encourage others to ask themselves is, how can I be the most loving and lovable me when things are not going well? How can I be the most loving and lovable me when my mate pushes every single button and frustrates me to the hilt? And so, what I became aware of is that I needed to be prepared for that, knowing that that was going to happen, because that's what happens with human beings. They push each other's buttons. And yes, and that's often when the worst of us comes out. So I thought about it. So I said, I need to have a plan. I need to prepare myself. Jesse said the same thing. It's like we know there's things are going to happen. We know that sometimes we're not going to be on the right track with each other. But rather than get into a big argument, big conflict about it, let's prepare ourselves for it so that we are responding in a way that's going to, number one, help us solve the problem, and number two, move forward. Because one thing that I learned years ago is that successful couples who have marriages and love relationships that thrive, they have 5 positive interaction and experiences with each other, um, and to every frustrating experience. I'm not going to call them negative, but they can become negative, but they become very frustrating. And so when you have that formula in mind, moving forward and preparing yourself, it helps you to stay on track. I would say that having a plan for each person to center themselves in a way with that goal in mind is the heart of every love story. There's lots of love stories that I see in the movies. I remember growing up, we used to watch, my sisters and I would watch romantic movies at home. And I remember wanting to have like that fairy tale kind of relationship. And actually, thank God, I really did for a very long time. So let's get into this a little more. So I'm going to tell you a story. It's a short story. It's a story about a couple that I'm going to call John and Sarah. So they've been married about 19 years. They have 2 teenage daughters. The oldest is leaving for college next year. The youngest will be leaving for college 2 years after. John and Sarah are very proud of having a happy, loving family, full of love, full of mutual support, and they have a lot of fun together. However, like many couples, they found themselves so caught up in daily life with parenting and work and other responsibilities that they, over time, began to neglect their connection. They began to drift apart emotionally, physically, and sexually. And so they knew that it was missing. They knew that they loved each other, but they didn't know how to get back on track. Now, they knew what was working for them was that they had a spiritual connection and they had a mental connection because they were intellectual, logical people. They thought things through together, they planned together, but they didn't have a plan for how to connect more deeply on those other areas, the emotional, the physical, and the sexual. So something happened. And, usually I don't think about things happening being coincidence. I think things happen at the right time when you're ready to hear it and see it. So they went on a date one night with their friends, Amy and Arnold. I'll call them Amy and Arnold. And so they were having a good time. And then the conversation began to become more personal. And Amy and Arnold, who were married 2 years more, 21 years, they were already empty nesters. And so they had a heart discussion about what was lacking in their marriage. Now, they had a good marriage, they loved each other, but it wasn't, they would say that their marriage connection was like mediocre. So it wasn't, they weren't in survival stage. but they weren't thriving. And since they were empty nesters, they knew with all of the time that they're going to have together without their daughters, I think they had 2 sons at home, that that's not how they wanted to live the rest of their life. So they went to counseling. And so one of the things that they discovered to do from the counseling is to begin to prepare themselves to include those areas that were missing. And so they said, you know what? That makes sense. Why don't we prepare ourselves for the life that we want to have together? Now, a lot of people say in their golden years, they'd only been married 21 years. It's like what they want is their future to be like together. So what I was saying in the beginning, it's real important to prepare yourself. Jesse and I prepared ourselves. Amy and Arnold decided that they were going to prepare themselves. So John and Sarah thought that was a really good idea. And so they said, you know what? Let's take that first step. This is the first step. And the first step is the first key. The first step was to have a conversation about what was missing. Now, having the conversation was important, but it was easier said than done. I mean, this was a very sensitive conversation about what they were going to do to add more of an emotional, physical, and sexual connection. It was difficult, but they had the conversation. And then while they were having the conversation, while they were thinking about it, because this was not a 5-minute conversation, since they are the kind of people who think things through, they said, you know, it's going to be important for us to make sure that we have reasons for why we want to do this. And it is important to have reasons for why you want to make any change in your marriage, in your love relationship, or in your life. And so they came up with reasons for why they needed to prepare themselves. I mean, there's other keys, but we're just talking about this one. So here's 3 of the reasons that they came up with about why it is important for them to prepare themselves and have a plan to expand and deepen their connection in these 3 areas. So one of the reasons they came up with was preparing themselves and having a plan, setting goals would provide clear direction and purpose for them showing up in this new way, to be available for each other in this new way. They would have direction. They would have purpose. The second reason is because they'd have a roadmap. And, you know, it's like when you have a roadmap for success in any area, it does make a difference because you don't get off track with distractions and what have you. You know exactly where you're going. You know the mile markers. You know the milestones to keep you on track. And who said is how important it is to keep your eyes on the prize? So that was their second reason. And the third reason they came up with is because it would strengthen their sense of teamwork. Worthy reasons to me. So those were their reasons. And then they started implementing. Do you want to know some of the results that they experienced and enjoyed together? Want to know? I'm glad you asked. There are several. So here's my 3 favorites. Just working this through in terms of developing a plan, setting the goal. They enjoyed how they felt having the conversation based on their goal. And then the parts about what was possible for them emotionally, physically, and sexually was something that they began to look forward to. That's the second result. It looked like moving forward that this would be more like an adventure for them. And the third one is that they really did look forward to what this new experience, this expanded and deepened connection was going to be like for them. The beginning of it felt pretty good to them. So goal setting in a relationship is one of the very important keys for relationships to thrive and for lasting love. So now it's your turn. On a scale of 1 to 10, where would you say the two of you stand on goal setting in those 5 areas of intimacy: spiritually, mentally, physically, sexually, emotionally? Where would you say that you stand? 1 means not at all. 10 means off the chart. You're really there. So when you think about your answer to that question, my next question to you is, are you satisfied with where you are? If the answer is yes, I would say congratulations. If the answer is not really, then I would ask you, would you like to bridge the gap from where you are to where you want to be? So if the answer is yes to that, then I would like to invite you to take the Marriage Strength Quiz. It's a quiz where it's a short quiz where you can get the big picture of where you are in these different areas. And having the information of where you started, just like Amy and Arnold and George and Sarah, knowing where you stand, it helps you to make a decision about whether you want to go further. So I'm going to put the link to the quiz. I'm going to put it in the. I don't think I can put it in this. I don't think I can put it here. I'm still learning how to do this. Use this tool for doing this presentation. But it's real important to have that information about yourselves so that you know about the areas that you can be more of the change you want to see and also be more of the love that you want to be. So when you have the results, you will also have the opportunity to move forward together or at least begin to plan together. So I'm going to figure out how to get this quiz in here. And remember, this is the very first key to, okay, let me see if I can do this. This is the very first key to long-lasting love and a relationship that thrives. I am open to your questions. Please feel free to ask questions. Yeah, it says I cannot post this link here. Okay, I'll figure out how to do that. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the comment part of whatever platform you're watching this on. So again, thank you so much for joining me. I really want to support you to work together to have a relationship that is built on long-lasting love and a relationship that thrives. Next time, I'm going to talk about the next key. There's so many ways that you can reconnect together and if you have something really good, you can make it better. Take care. See you next time.